Jim, do you know that feeling when you're on a plane and suddenly you get hit with an overwhelming bad smell?
Overwhelming bad smell.
Yeah, like maybe someone's passed gas.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
So you're talking about only on an airplane?
I'm talking about especially on an airplane.
Okay, I was going to say, I don't know how to tell you this, but I've smelled it in all kinds of places.
Yeah. But I'm talking about specifically in an airplane.
Okay, yes.
And have you ever been the culprit where you feel like you've got to pass gas on a plane?
Have I ever been the culprit? Melissa, let me tell you. I think 100% of the flights that I've been on, I've been one of the culprits. Yeah.
I very rarely have that experience.
Really?
Well, I'll tell you a story at the end of this about how that came back to, we'll say, bite me in the stomach.
Okay. Yes.
But ultimately, this episode is all about the chemistry of why you are more likely to pass gas on an airplane.
I believe it completely.
That it's more likely?
Oh, yes.
It even has a scientific name and everything.
Nice.
So we're going to get into airplanes. And while I was researching this, I found other really cool stuff about the air on planes. And so this is actually part one of a 2-part air on planes or airplanes series.
Air on airplanes. Okay.
Air on airplanes.
Interesting.
So are you ready to learn about why you're more likely to pass gas on a plane?
I'm ready to learn about it. Yes.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Hey, I'm Melissa.
I'm Jam.
And I'm a chemist.
And I'm not.
And welcome to Chemistry for Your Life.
The podcast helps you understand the chemistry of your everyday life.
And before we get started, I'm going to dedicate today's episode to Ash and Emily. They are our 2 new community members. Isn't that so exciting?
Very exciting.
And I don't know how you feel about this episode being dedicated to you. Hopefully you're okay with talking about bodily functions.
Yeah. And, the episode's dedicated to you, but it's not about you.
Right. Not about you.
Yeah, we're not saying that at all.
We're very excited to have you in our community. And I also wanted to shout out the anonymous listener who asked this question.
Nice.
So
is it like a anonymous, question asker, but really it's you?
No, it is not
someone's
me.
wondering.
Nope.
Okay.
I can show you the receipts, though I cannot show the receipts to others.
I see.
Yes.
Got it.
Of who asked this question, but they essentially said, why am I so gassy on this flight? And also they said, apparently it's a thing.
Okay. And is it someone I'm married to? Just curious.
No,
okay.
Certainly not.
All right, cool. Yeah, just checking.
Okay. So a listener of this show who wanted to remain anonymous reached out to me about the scientific phenomenon of needing to pass gas in an excessive amount on planes.
Okay.
And I actually can answer that pretty quickly. But then I was like, oh, I think that Jam could maybe answer that. Maybe Jam could think about it pretty quickly. So I had to do minimal research on this, but I did do it just to check.
Okay.
And then I found other fun stuff too. But I thought this would be a good time to test your critical thinking about chemistry skills.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so what do you think about why people might feel more bloated on airplanes?
Okay, so let me think.
And if you're listening at home, this is a good chance for you. Maybe pause real quick, do the double tap on the headphone.
Nice.
And see if you can think of the answer too.
Yeah, this is very fun. Definitely do it. Even if you're thinking, I don't know if I have an idea, or just do it. Just try.
Just think about gas molecules.
Just think about how I'm about to do this, and what I say may be completely wrong and very crazy. So
But that's the best way to learn.
Yeah.
Research shows the best way to learn is if you try to formulate a hypothesis yourself first.
Nice. I believe it.
Okay, so I'll give you some time to think. I'll take a sip of my drink.
Okay, I'm going to kind of think out loud a little.
Okay, great.
So for one, I think it's kind of common knowledge. I don't know if we've talked about this exact thing before. We've talked quite a bit about like air pressure and stuff, right? So when you're up much higher in the atmosphere, where planes tend to be, if things are going right, the air pressure is lower, correct? Which means that just the number of like air molecules, which is a bunch of other elements, not like it's not like air is an element, right? It's like oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, whatever. They are more spread out from each other. They're not packed in as tightly as they would be down here.
Yeah.
Right? So it seems like that's bad for us in the sense that they go to lengths to try to counter that in these airplanes, right? So they pressurize, if I guess the word they use, the cabins in order to, I guess, create a more normal environment that we're used to. It's better for humans on long flights. What's interesting about that is that they must be doing something to pack air into the cabin to make it seem more normal. But I wonder if there's any chance that they, like, I've never really heard if they do that exactly how it would be on the ground, or if it's like, more pressurized or a little less or something like that. I don't know. But I could see there being some weird effect on the fact that we already have gas in our bodies. At least, I'm not saying this about you, listener, but
no, you do, listener.
I was just going to say, I am fine and proud saying I have a lot of gas in my body at all times. And my body finds it necessary to get rid of some of that on a regular basis. I'm the chief offender of that in my household. So I wonder if that process of, like, being in a normal environment in the airport, going into a plane, going up in the air, but being in a pressurized cabin, if it does something to the pressure of the gas that's already in our bodies, where it wants to expand more, spread out more, which would be like there's, I guess, greater pressure on it, same number of molecules, but they want to spread out more.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I feel like that's perfect.
One thing I'll add is that the last time that we flew, my wife and I both were like, why are we so gassy? And I know I've felt bloated on planes before and stuff like that.
So you've recently experienced this phenomenon.
And it wasn't really new to me. Like, I felt like this is what I usually feel like. But it was funny that I didn't really know if this was a thing that everybody experienced, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that, like, we got off the plane and we were kind of talking and stuff, and my wife was like, man, I feel just so, like, just bloated and full of nothing. You know, it's not like we'd eaten a big meal on the plane or anything.
Yeah.
And so that, now that we're talking about this, I'm like, yes, that is exactly what we were experiencing, whatever it was. So how wrong or right was I? What was I missing?
You're very, very close, actually. I would say you even maybe made it a little more complicated than it needed to be.
Oh, nice.
So,
or not nice, I guess. Sorry.
No, but good, I think. So I'm going to say, and I think it's good that our listeners get to see the authentic learning process. So if you had a balloon full of air and you took that balloon up into the atmosphere, it would expand naturally. Because when you're up in the air, there's literally less of the atmosphere weighing down on you. And so there's less pressure. There's less, of the weight of the literal air on you. So because there's less pressure, those molecules don't need as much energy to take up more space. So if you have this balloon with an enclosed number of molecules, and say you took it at the exact same temperature all the way up into space, you can, or well, not into space, but like up as high as an airplane flies, it would expand a lot, potentially even to the point of bursting, because it has so much less pressure on it. Those molecules are able to move even more.
Got it. Okay.
Now, if you took that same one and went under the ocean surface, it would get smaller because there's so much more pressure. It's forcing those gas bubbles closer and closer together.
Or if it was at the same sea level but lower temperature, right?
Yep.
We talked about that putting in like a freezer. Yep. Okay.
Temperature and pressure both kind of have that same effect.
Right. Okay.
So if you go up in temperature, it gets larger. And if you go down in temperature, it gets smaller. Put the balloon in the freezer, gets smaller. Yep.
Okay, yes.
So our bowels are like the balloon in this situation. You go up in the air and you are in a pressurized cabin. But of course, it's a dynamic situation, right? The pressure is rapidly changing. And so even though they're keeping the pressure at a somewhat constant level, it's not staying the same exact pressure as that you had on the ground.
Right.
And I will say the way that they pressurize the air, I always assumed is the airplane was just sealed off. It's not.
Right. I guess if it was, there'd be like more and more carbon dioxide the whole time, right? And that's probably
well, they could even filter it if they were recycling the air. But it's about 50-50 recycled air and air that's brought in from the engines that's compressed. And so more pressure. And they send it through like a series of, once it comes in through the engines, like cooling and filtering and all these things to get it to be like comfy air. You're not blowing hot air into the cabin or whatever. But they mix that with the air that's already there and put it back out. And it goes through a lot of processes. And we're going to talk about some of those next week.
Nice. One thing I learned that maybe is one of the things we'll talk about next week. On one of the flights, I was sitting next to a pilot. And he's not a pilot for planes that large. I don't know what all range he does, but he was not like a commercial airline pilot. But he'd flown a bunch of different kinds of planes. I guess including some like small passenger planes, but again, not for like a big chain. And he said that they also humidify the air.
Yes.
Which I was like, no way. Like that makes so much sense, but I just never thought about it. And he was like, think about it, like if the air we're pulling in, like it's going to be this airway up here. It could be super different than what we're used to down there. It could be drier or whatever. And and so he was like, they kind of regulate that and depending on where you're flying to and from, they kind of keep an eye on that. And so I was like, oh my gosh, that's just crazy. Like the air on a plane, I never thought about. And here we are talking about it more.
Yeah.
Wow. And
that's also why the pressure isn't like, okay, we're going to leave the air pressure at exactly this pressure. I think they have to take into account the atmospheric pressure and the atmosphere on the plane. And so there's like dynamic systems that are controlling to make sure that it's the right pressure.
That makes so much sense.
And that it's safe for humans. Because if humans fell out of a plane, I think we would instantly die from the lack of pressure.
Wow. From that high?
I think. If you're that high, I think. As high as many commercial planes fly. Maybe not. Wow. But it was like, it's not safe for you to be at that level of pressure. But also you'd probably get the bins because you immediately would, so much gas would come. Do you know about the bins?
Yes, I do.
So much gas comes out of your blood so quickly because it's the same phenomenon.
Yeah.
So you probably would, if you left the pressurized cabin and just went out, it would be bad.
Yeah. The Bins, great album, bad thing to get.
Yes.
Though, in your body.
Yeah.
You know?
I didn't know it was an album.
So it's like a classic Radiohead album that it's funny to me because every time that is brought up in like a movie or something, we're like, oh, you have to do this to get the Bins. I was like, always like, it like sends me on this other direction, you know? Just like whenever someone's drinking coffee on a movie and I think, I'm like, now I want coffee.
Yeah.
It's like, when's the last time I listened to that album?
Yeah. That's funny.
Dang, cool. Wow. How interesting.
So so all that to say that the pressure is less in the cabin, although it's not enough less that it would be dangerous, but it's less. And so that is responsible for why our ears pop, is because there's a pressure differential. And it's responsible for what we call HAFE, HAFE, high altitude flatus expulsion.
Wow.
Because there's just less pressure on your bowels. So then the less pressure means that the same number of molecules can move around more. And so they're taking up more space in your body, but your body can't expand much more. And so you either have to let it out or be uncomfortable and hold it in.
And honestly, I mean, I would say don't be uncomfortable. Maybe go to the bathroom or whatever. But it's expanding. It's not a big deal. It's not your fault. It's just science. And you just have to Let it out.
I hated that. I hated that. Okay. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So one time, this is my story that I was going to share. Should I save it for the end? I was going to do it in categories.
Oh yeah, maybe do it in categories. I guess I wish I had saved mine too. But.
Okay. Well, I'll wrap this up a little bit because I think that's the main thing. It was just kind of a quick, fun one today that was like, oh yeah, we've talked about this before, and I think this is a good chance.
Nice.
And it's sort of like the opposite of what happened with the tire episode, and that was the first one you got.
You're right.
You know, that I was like, I didn't have to explain it.
Yeah.
So that's what happens. It also happens for hikers. They get the same thing. And I saw someone comment on a YouTube video that said, hikers call this the high altitudes. And that made me laugh.
I love that.
I knew you would. I saved it for you.
Yeah.
But I also have a similar thing. I have a water bottle that screws but has like a straw that pops open.
Oh.
And if I don't unscrew the whole lid, then the pressure is so much higher and so much less. Like it's very high in the bottle and it's less in the plane. And so if I open it, water will shoot out, and it has covered me before.
Yes.
Like I've gotten totally covered in it because it's essentially like creating a vacuum. There's way less pressure outside than there is inside. And similar things happen if you bring shampoo to a high altitude.
Right.
When you open it, it'll just like explode everywhere.
This has happened. That same thing's happened to my kids' water bottles, which are like, they have these ones where it has a straw and like a little, silicone thing, but it has a thing that flips it closed down.
Yeah.
And when it's closed down, it is fully sealed.
Yep. That's how
and
mine
so
is.
if which is often going to happen on like a summer day, the water we put in is colder and it warms up throughout the day, then it wants to push, I guess that like gap of air we've talked about in other things, wants to push down and push water out.
Yeah.
And so there's been several times we've gotten in the car after being out and about for a long day or whatever, and one of my kids will open the water bottle and get sprayed in the face.
Yep. And that's exactly what happens to me on the plane. And your toddlers.
That's so funny. That is so funny.
Yep. I have literally gotten sprayed in the face. Yeah.
Dang.
By
I feel
my own water bottle. Betrayal.
I guess better of you than like someone you don't know behind you or something, you
but
know?
It has gotten a little bit on the people next to me. And I was like, I remember the guy was like, what? And I was like, oh, sorry. I'm sorry. It's my water bottle. And I was like, it's me.
Yeah. Dang.
And then you have to sit next to them.
Yeah. That's tough.
So, good job. Good job explaining that. I'm really proud of you. I had a feeling you'd be able to do it. And I'm really excited that you're at the point where you're like thinking about the molecules and the pressure is very exciting.
And one thing I was missing that I think is cool to hear is like, I knew that the pressure up higher in the atmosphere at high altitude would be lower. I just wasn't sure how much they're changing that, artificially in the plane.
Yeah.
But so you're saying that for the most part, it's still going to be a little lower.
Yeah. The pressure on the plane versus on the ground.
Yes.
Yes. The pressure on the plane is lower. I think it's like probably, I didn't get a ton of clarity on this in my research, but it seemed like it was a game between what's safe for the people involved. Also what's comfortable for the people involved.
Right.
And how much energy are we spending, like fuel efficiency and things, to get the air where we want it to be.
Yeah.
So like, is it worth it to put in a little bit more pressure so that it's the same as it is on the ground, but it's not going to make anyone less safe, but it might just make you a little bit more comfortable? Maybe not.
Right.
So, and there's other things we'll talk about that they could also do to the air, but it adds to the fuel. It takes away from fuel efficiency, so it makes it less efficient. So then it makes a higher greenhouse effect carbon footprint. And so there's like all these problems that you have with planes. And so I think it's a game between that. And then also you have to be adjusting to the rapid changes in the outside pressure.
Right. Especially at the beginning where it's like, constantly changing into the cruising or whatever. Yeah.
So I think it's like you're accounting for all these factors. The computers that other people have programmed are accounting for all these factors, which is so impressive to me.
That makes a ton of sense.
Okay, so, and I read this article and I was like, is this a joke? But it's in a peer-reviewed journal article. And it was about how we should install carbon filters in airplane seats because they can significantly reduce, like by 50%, the smell of flatulence released.
Wow.
And they talked about all the negative effects you get from holding it in.
Right.
Which includes like raised blood pressure, stress effects, all this stuff. Well, here's my most terrible experience ever from holding it in because I have a problem passing gas in public. Like I can't do it. Not the kind of problem where you're doing it all the time.
Right.
That's a different kind of problem.
Yeah.
I have the opposite problem.
Okay.
Where it's like I just can't. There's something in me. That's very hard to do that. Like I think they're probably like my immediate family is the only people who have ever heard me do that intentionally. And like now that I'm grown, probably only Mason.
Right.
It's just not a thing that I like to do in front of people.
Interesting. So you don't like to do it in front of other people.
It's like I can't.
Interesting. So you don't like to. Okay. I'm starting to wrap my head around this.
My body can't do it. It was like scary and hard and terrifying the first time I did that in front of Mason.
Yeah.
And like, it's just hard. Okay.
Yep.
I don't know. Okay. So same thing is true on planes.
Okay.
I can't just be like, I'm going to risk it.
Right.
It's like my body says absolutely not. So at this time in my life, I was drinking a lot of Dr. Pepper.
Right.
And I got one at the airport.
Yep.
And I was drinking fizzy drink on the plane. And I remember starting to feel some gas trying to happen. And I said, absolutely not. And I held it in. It's a short flight. I was just going to Mississippi. And I was like, no, it's not happening. And then I got off and I got in the car with my sister and her significant other. And I had started to feel like sharp pain. So it was kind of intermittent. And then I don't know what happened. Air bubble moved. The gas pain was so bad. Ooh. And it wasn't like the kind that at that point I could not let anything out. It was trapped in my bowels. All I remember, they were laughing at me. They felt so bad for me. I was literally on my side in the back in the back seat of their car with gas pain that wouldn't come out. And they were like, you just have to take gas. So you just have to let it out. We'll roll it on the windows. But nothing was happening.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't live like this anymore.
Yeah.
And
from then on, you vowed to always let them fly.
But I don't.
Oh, okay.
What I do now is I never drink fizzy drinks
on a plane.
On planes, or like before I get on the plane.
Right.
I only once I'm in the air, I'll get myself like a LaCroix or whatever. Usually they have like club soda.
Yeah.
But I never. It's like only flat water leading up to it, and that solved the problem.
Okay.
But it was like all of the gas from the fizzy drink in my stomach revolted against me and I wanted to die. I
do know what you're talking about gas pains. I've had this pretty bad before when I'm in like a scenario where like, even though I'm freer with my flatulence than you may be, we've all been in scenarios where like, there's just no way you can right now.
Yeah.
You're in a quiet room. You're at a like play and it's a dramatic scene.
Yeah.
You know, like everyone's got the time where like, you're just holding it no matter what.
Yep.
And then you're like, ooh, like job interview, something like that, whatever. You know, obviously. And I know exactly what you mean. And it's weird how much it hurts.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So strange.
Yeah. And I think probably what happened is that I didn't let it fly on the plane. And gas expanded. And then there was like a bubble somewhere in a place where the bowel was having a hard time getting it out. You know?
So basically in our PSA that we would do, it'd be like, when you fly, let it fly kind of thing. So
that's like literally what that peer-reviewed journal article was. It was like flatulence on planes, just let it go or something.
Yeah.
But actually, I still don't do it. But I do remember that when I took the gas X, it did help.
Nice. Maybe
should I do an episode on that?
Maybe so. And also that might be like just a good, like, you know, everyone's got their kind of like things they figure out to bring on a plane, you know? And
yeah.
These are, I'll have this just in case and stuff like that. I feel like having some gas X
could be
pretty dang smart, honestly.
I was so traumatized by that I did not fly without gas X for years because I was able to take it in the car. And by the time I got home, I think I was able to start, you know, passing. It took a while though.
Yeah.
I do remember my sister and her husband rolled down the back windows and they were like, you just have to let it go. You just have to. And I was like, you don't understand at this point. It's like, not trying to escape. It's just stabbing me.
The problem is that it's not trying. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my guess on plane story. That was going to be my category for you, is what's a memorable plane story you have, and it can be related to gas or not.
Okay, well, I actually have two little things I was thinking about. One is that it's funny that another reason it's funny that we're talking about this is because before my wife and I went on our most recent trip, she had sent me this video. I can't remember what it was on or whatever. It doesn't matter, but it was like this this video in an airplane. And this guy is just like the guy who's filming is like kind of close to the back, and some guy like 3 or 4 rows up just is like, whoever is farting, please stop farting. And what's funny is I was just like, oh, that's hilarious. And of course, there's no way you could figure out who it is. Like the air's moving all around and blah blah blah. And but it's funny now to learn this chemistry lesson and be like, I mean, it could have been a lot of people, honestly.
It probably was everyone.
And honestly, the guy started to break it to that guy in the planes. Like, people need to be letting it out.
Yeah.
Honestly. Like, do you really want them getting gas pains?
Yeah, just bring a mask with you.
Is it their fault? Yeah, bring a mask with you. Put some earplugs in your nostrils, whatever. But I feel like it's funny that whoever it was that was passing gas, if not multiple people, were probably like, I don't know why I'm... Like, it just, sorry, I'm gassier than I normally am. Like, they're probably confused as well, you know? And like, just like biting their tongue. So that's one thing I was thinking about.
Yeah.
That my wife thought that video was so funny. And then when we were having that experience.
Karma.
Yes. We were having that experience on the plane. She was like, I'm that person. Like, I really need to pass. I was thinking about altitude and pressure and stuff like that. And this memory came to mind where I remember whenever I was in 4th or 5th grade, somewhere around there, I went to Bolivia with my dad, which is where he's from. And what's odd about that is obviously everyone, when they fly anywhere, you go high up in altitude and come back down. But Bolivia, specifically La Paz, is on what's called the Altiplano. It is very high altitude all the time.
Yeah.
And I got altitude sickness the first like day I was there, maybe 2. Yeah. Where everything felt weird. I just didn't feel right. It was like so odd. Like my body was like, this is not what it's supposed to be like.
Okay, so there was an article that I read, and I don't know if I referenced it or not because it ended up being like, okay, well, this is more bigger picture, but that altitude sickness, the air is not as dissolved in your blood. And so you don't have as much oxygen in your blood, but also that means that there's less CO2, which CO2, when it dissolves with or like interacts with water, it becomes HCO3, so carbonic acid. And so when you have less of that dissolved in your bodily fluids, they become more basic.
Okay.
And so it can impact like your digestion and maybe impact the motility of your bowels because you have less carbon dioxide dissolved in your like bodily fluids. That chemistry is like important in moving things along and like can impact a lot more systems than just like, oh, I can't breathe. I think people think altitude sickness is like, oh, I can't breathe very well. But it's like, no, your body is literally like, wait, suddenly I can't function right because all of the chemistry is off. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that's amazing. That explains why it was so weird, though. It's like at a very fundamental level, something was going in a way that it normally wouldn't and shouldn't.
Yeah.
But it was like so hard to describe that. And I don't know why my dad didn't experience that. Obviously, he's older. He had lived there for so long. So maybe his body was like just able to adjust a little better or something. But it still seems strange. I remember feeling like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
But anyway.
We were worried about that because we have had friends that have like driven overnight or whatever to get to Colorado and they went hiking right away and they had to turn around and go home because they got altitude sickness.
Wow.
So on our big hiking trip, we're kind of worried about that. So we like very slowly eased into it. The first place was like not hiking. We like just hung out by the lake, to try to, and driving is usually better than flying because you're not like immediately there. But it can be rough.
Yeah.
And you can get those cans of compressed oxygen, and they can help with altitude sickness because you're getting more oxygen in. Not with everything, but they can help with some stuff.
Interesting.
Well, I felt like there's something else I was going to say, but I don't remember. Oh, well. Any other fun airplane-related stories?
I don't think so.
I do remember the time I took you and your wife to DFW airport, dropped you off, drove home, and then you called and you were like, actually, our flight's out of left field.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
I do. We Ubered over there, and then we found out they had instituted a visa change.
Oh, right.
But since we had booked the tickets, and somehow we weren't notified about it,
Yep.
we immediately, it's like a digital application, we immediately applied. My wife's got approved immediately. Mine did not, which I did have a lot more travel on my history and stuff like that. And so we had to change flights, and then our flight was back at DFW. Mm-hmm. We Ubered. Wait, did you drive us to Dallas?
I drove you to the one, I think, and then you Ubered back.
Yeah. And then, so then we came back to DFW. So it was cool. We got to just kind of like see both airports in DFW.
Yeah.
And then there was an issue with the plane, and we couldn't take off that night. They put us in a hotel, and then we flew out early the next morning.
Yep.
So it was so
crazy.
Fun. Yeah.
It was crazy. Here's a little fun flight tidbit, and then we can wrap up.
Okay.
I have found the perfect flight system of like my bags.
Okay.
Because I'm traveling all the time for work nowadays.
Uh-huh.
If you get a carry-on rolly bag,
uh-huh,
and then you get like a backpack that rides on the carry-on rolly bag,
uh-huh,
you don't have to have a heavy backpack on your back all schlepping through the airport.
mm-hmm,
And you can just roll, make sure it's one of the good rolly bags that you can like have all four wheels rolling.
mm-hmm.
And then it makes the experience at the airport feel so luxurious. You can even put your cup in the side pouch of your backpack, in your water bottle holder. And you're like, I must be royalty at this airport. I don't have a single thing. I'm not carrying the weight of anything.
Yeah.
It's just riding along my little carry-on. Now
Nice.
That might mean you have to pack lighter, but you don't have to, it's a carry-on, but you're not literally carrying anything.
Yeah.
And it's luxurious.
Packing and getting a system you like is so satisfying.
It's so satisfying.
So much fun.
It's excellent. And then for my overnight bag, like if I'm going in a car for a weekend, I use a packed bag.
Mm-hmm.
And those are amazing because there's these duffels that unzip all the way. And so then you're not, they're clamshell open, and each side has like, and then you're not digging in your backpack or you're digging in your duffel bag. You can look at everything you've brought.
Yeah.
Ugh. My mother-in-law gave me that for Christmas and I cried.
So nice. We are huge fans of that company. And yeah, they just like really think through so much stuff like that. Like, there's some people who don't like that. I'm like, why not? You need to like, one, you can access everything when you get where you're going. But two, it's so helpful. Like instead of using packing cubes, like I'll use like a bag for toiletries and stuff like that within it. But instead of using packing cubes, you can like divide your stuff out in halves.
Yeah.
And it really helps kind of keep things, one, keep you from overpacking, but two, it keeps things organized for you.
Yeah.
It's so great.
So great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love a good packing situation. Good packing system.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for coming and learning about flatulence on airplanes.
Thanks for teaching us. If only you had been able to teach me this before our trip, but it's okay. Still so relevant. Wouldn't have changed a thing, honestly.
I mean, except learning before.
I mean, like I would have known it, but there's nothing to like, you know.
You could have had Gassy.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay.
Did you have any bubbly water that day?
Oh yeah, I think I did quite a bit.
There you go. That's what that changed everything about flying for me.
You know what's crazy for me is that I'm just not sure that it's any one thing. I think it's just my body just likes to make lots of gas.
Maybe so.
I think it's just like one of those things about me. You know, like some people are tall. It's kind of like that.
That same paper had a statistic, and they did cite a paper, but I did not read it. So, you know.
Yeah.
That said that women produce less gas than men, but women's is more likely to smell bad.
Huh.
And I was like, according to what?
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Now I'm like, who's doing research on flatulence?
Yeah, show me the person who said that, by the way.
Well, they did. They had a reference. I
Okay.
just didn't click on it. So.
Well, whose nose was the judge of this?
Yeah, whose nose was the judge of this?
Well, thanks for teaching us.
Yeah.
Very cool. And if you have a question, like this anonymous person who asked this question has had about something in your everyday life you think might be chemistry, please ask us.
Mm-hmm.
Or follow up to this one. You can send those to us on our website at chemforyourlife.com. That's chemforyourlife.com to share your thoughts, ideas, questions with us. If you'd like to help us keep our show going and contribute to cover the cost of making it, you can join our super cool community of people. Got ahead of myself. Community of people, supporters, sponsors, whatever. That community helps keep our show going. They keep the show free for everybody. They get bonus kind of things, little behind the scenes deals, that kind of stuff for us to say thank you. They get an exclusive episode every month of Melissa and I hanging out and talking and being friends. It's just for them. And access to an ad-free feed of the show, things like that. So if you'd like to join that, you definitely can. We'd love to have you and support the show, just like our friends who we dedicated this episode to today. We will dedicate an episode to you if you join our community. But if you're not able to do that, you can still help us by subscribing on our favorite podcast app, rating, review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and subscribe on YouTube. Leave a comment, say hey over there. Those things help us to share chemistry with even more people. And help more people discover the show and also find out about the chemistry of their everyday life.
Of their airplane trips.
Yeah.
And there is more. Oh, that's the thing I was going to ask you. I was going to ask if you had like a scratchy throat or if you felt like kind of gross a little bit after the plane, like just a little not good.
No, but in this scenario, most recently, it was about, we all had like sniffles and colds and stuff before this trip. And I was like, definitely almost back to 100%, but not quite. And especially the biggest thing was that a lot of the ears, or many ears in my house, about half of the ears had an ear infection or were like almost to one. And so that added to the whole pressure ear stuff. I was like, already my ears were not feeling great. And like one of them kind of felt like I wasn't hearing great out of it.
Yeah.
And then of course throw a bunch of like
airplane stuff.
Yeah. So
well, there is some science to back up why like you just sometimes feel gross after you get off of a plane. And that's what we're going to talk about next week.
Nice.
And I think that will be, I was fascinated by this information.
Cool.
So that'll be a fun little sort of bonus type episode, bonus airplane episode.
I'm interested.
So today's episode was made possible by our financial supporters on Patreon. It means so much to us that you guys are all the things that Jim said, that you're willing to support the show, that you want to get all those little bonuses, that you want to hang out with us. And so we like to always thank every one of you by name. So thank you to our newest, Emily, and closely before Emily, Ash. They were within a day of each other, or 2 days. Emily H. and Ash, welcome to the community. Vince W., Julie S., Heather R., Autoclave, Chelsea M., Dorian V., Scott B., Jesse R., Sierra L., John T., Jeanette N., Cullen R., Erica B., Elizabeth P., Sarah M., Rachel R., Latila, Katrina, Suzanne, Venus, Lynn, Jacob, Brian, Emerson, Christina, Tim, Stephen, Chris and Claire, Chelsea, Avishai, and Hunter. Thank you all for everything you do to make this show possible and to help keep the podcast going.
And if you'd like to learn more about today's chemistry lesson, you can check out the references for this episode in our show notes or in the description of the video on YouTube.
Yay, chemistry!
Yay, chemistry!